What's up, everybody? Good morning and happy Friday. Dan Kasper Show is on the air. Appreciate you checking us out wherever you may be listening to us from. Also available online, sportstalk1051.com, the Sports Talk app, your Google and Alexa home devices. The video stream that's up and rolling on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, all that fun stuff. We actually begin this morning thinking, all right, we're going to talk some Brewers, the latest drama surrounding the Corbin Burns situation. If you didn't hear what he had to say, what the Brewers apparently told him at the arbitration, we'll play it, and it's mind-boggling. However, we have breaking news to open up the morning already. Aaron Jones, Adam Schefter reporting a resolution. Instead of being released, Aaron Jones will be staying in Green Bay this season after the Packers and his agents reached an agreement on a $11 million salary for the 2023 season. That includes an $8.52 million signing bonus. Aaron Jones will still have 2 years remaining on his contract with the Packers, but this year has been adjusted. Including this season, Jones now will have made $31 million since 2021, the most for any running back other than Christian McCaffrey. So that literally just popped up as we were getting ready to turn on the microphones this morning. And I was actually thinking about talking about something with running backs and pace because I don't know if anybody has Twitter or Facebook. Maybe you saw the graphic or something, but somebody had posted one of those graphs, like the last 10 or so Super Bowl winners and the starting running backs of those winners and their salary that they made, and I think the most expensive might have been Leonard Fournette with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It was only $2 million. And we know Aaron Jones has a huge contract and such, and we always talk about quarterbacks, and their big pay scales and such. But there you go. Aaron Jones sticking around for Green Bay. Now, what does this mean? I'm sure everybody's going to be, kind of like trying to connect some dots. Does this mean something for Aaron? Does it mean, for Aaron Rodgers? Does it mean anything at all? I don't think it does. I don't think it points in one direction or the other. I could be completely wrong in this thing. But never say never, I guess. Because we knew that, Goody pretty much said it at the end of his season presser. He pretty much said, yeah, we got to restructure that. We got to restructure that contract. And then there you go. They got it done before even March kicks off here. So we'll see once more numbers kind of come through and how much does this actually save on the salary cap and such. We'll deep dive into this coming up a little bit later, but not a bad way to open up a Friday morning. Having that perfect. Usually these happen like right after we're done off the air. So thank you, I guess, Schefter, for breaking it, literally right at 6 o'clock this morning. So, but you good with it? I don't think anybody's too upset that they're keeping Aaron Jones around, unless you wanted a completely total rebuild and just wanted to move on and save some salary and just break everything down and start anew. But I don't know if too many people who don't like Aaron Jones on and off the field. All right, so we'll talk about that. What I was going to lead off here this morning was the Brewers thing, and that's obviously the biggest topic at hand right now. I don't know if you were tuning into the DA show here this morning about 5:30 or so, but they were talking about this Brewers thing, and what I don't even know what to say. I'm kind of speechless, and that's why I'm glad Brandon Berg's going to be popping on, and he's for my personally for the people that I know, one of the smartest Brewers baseball people out there. And he's going to be hopping on, and as he said, he's got a lot of things to say. We were talking a little bit last night, and I know a couple of the things that he might kind of bring up and such, but let's just say he's like the majority, if not all of you out there, pretty darn frustrated right now. We talked about the arbitration thing yesterday. Would it lead to some hard feelings, drama between Corbin Burnes and the Brewers? There is, but something apparently popped up in that arbitration hearing. Let's hear Corbin Burnes tell it. So this is from Adam McCulvey. He tweeted out this video as they were talking to Corbin Burnes yesterday. It's about a minute and a half or so, but there's a part in here that he brings up that I think is the biggest thing. I don't think it's necessarily the difference is $700,000. I mean, he mentioned it and such, but there's something else he says in here that is one of the most ridiculous things I've heard a team allegedly say. So I'll play it now in case you didn't hear it, then get your feedback from it.
At the hearing clip.
Putting him at the forefront of why the Brewers didn't make the postseason last year. That is perhaps, I don't even know how to react to that other than like, what in HE double hockey sticks is going on? Yeah, okay, there's a little bad blood in terms of, hurt feelings of how they value him money-wise, blah, 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 this, that, the other thing, ha, ha, ha. But to put him at the forefront of the reason why the Brewers didn't make postseason last year, now, what wasn't in the video, but according to Adam McCulvey, Corbin said that the Brewers made him a 2-year offer a day or two before the hearing that was, quote, pretty poor. That, he said, was the only mention so far of any sort of multi-year deal. And McCulvey followed that up by saying, further context, the Brewers never made Burnes a 2-year offer per source. What Burnes was referring to when he said that that there was some last-minute offers that added a club or mutual option for 2024, but Burns and his camp considered them pretty poor. Again, I think, we were kind of focusing on the money aspect of it yesterday. Would there be, some like, are we really, counting pennies, penny pinching for just like $700,000? But to go in there in front of Corbin Burns too and put him at the forefront of the reason why the Brewers didn't make the postseason. Guys, gals, what's going on with this team in the last year and a half, whatever, ever since the Josh Hader thing? What is going on? What is going on with this team? Now, for a lot of people out there on social media, more calls to sell the team, wanting Mark to sell the team, Mark Ignacio, the owner. I don't know who the person was that allegedly made that case in arbitration for, or who said that about Corbin Burns. I don't know if it was Matt Arnold. I don't know if it was kind of like what the DA show was saying this morning, kind of you send a sacrificial lamb or one of those, the guys in there that, that's their job is to kind of be the bad guy, good cop, bad cop sort of thing. But holy moly. We're gonna hit this up. I gotta get your thought. If that was the first you heard that, or maybe it wasn't, but you listened to it earlier, what was your first reaction? What was your first thought going through your mind when you heard that from Corbin Burns? Oh, nuts. Other stuff on the game plan here this morning. We'll talk a little Bucks. They are now in their All-Star break, but even with the win against the Bulls last night to get their 12th win in a row, it may have came at a little bit of a cost. Giannis left the game due to a sprained wrist that they're calling it. Now, what does that mean for his availability for the All-Star weekend? He's coaching the celebrity game. He's, doing the skills comp, and obviously is a captain for one of the teams for Sunday's game. Remains to be seen. But hopefully it's nothing too big. X-rays were negative. Kind of throwing out the word minor. But we'll talk with Dr. Crow about it. Coming up for our Inside the Training Room segment in under an hour from now, just about 7:07 or such. So, but Bucks continuing their winning ways, 12 in a row, and now they've got a few days off to rest up. And this was a game yesterday, too, that we didn't see Chris Middleton. We didn't see Pat on there either. But Brooke Lopez. Brooke carrying it. Having himself a game last night. 31. Remember, we kind of forget Brooke Lopez when he started the season was just like, all right, he's on a tear, especially defensively. 33, excuse me. I shorted him 2 points. But, yeah. Carter was also on fire. This is like going back to what I was kind of talking about the other day. There's talk that they want some depth at the guard position, depth at like a point guard position and such, and which is fine. But my thing is, like, I don't necessarily want Carter's minutes cut because he has shown that he could be a pretty darn good player coming off the bench. Especially when he's, especially 3-point shooting this year. And for his career, he's a 39% 3-point shooter, but this year he's shooting 41.7% from three. Like, I don't necessarily want his minutes cut because he is one of their better 3-point shooters on this team. I'd put him in that group, with like Grayson and such. But we'll again talk to Dr. Crow about this wrist injury for Giannis. Any concern? Should we be concerned about it? And and all that stuff. So we got coming up. I mentioned Brandon will be popping on after that. Obviously, we're going to talk a lot of Brewers with him. We'll recap some of the regional stuff as well with some postseason play going on. I know we had some hockey starting off last night. Memorial losing against Rapids and boys hockey. We saw Chi High girls hockey losing last night too to Black River Falls. So, but we'll recap it all with the expert, Mr. Brandon Berg, coming up a little bit later on here this morning. We've got cream of the crop. If you want to play along, you can do a little cream of the crop with us. We got a couple other things I got planned coming up here as well, but let's just dive into this thing. All right, Brewers fans, I want to hear from you. All right, hit me up. Start hitting me up with some texts on that Shoe Doctors bullpen line, 715-830-1912. Got Twitter at DAN KASPER, Facebook.com/Kasper Sports. We've got the video stream that's up and rolling here too. Give me your thoughts on this Corbin Burns situation, or if you want to chime in about the Aaron Jones new deal to stay with the Packers that broke almost 25 minutes ago. In case you're just joining us, we'll maybe revisit. We will revisit that, but maybe we'll kind of keep you updated on some of the numbers that continue to come through here. How much did the Packers actually save on the cap? That's probably the biggest question, right? Everybody's trying to figure out how much of it opens up some cap space for this year. Does it mean anything with Rodgers or not? I don't know if it does. But maybe it kind of opens up. Maybe, if the Packers truly want Rodgers back and they see that Jones is going to be sticking around, maybe that helps the thing. Maybe that helps the cause a little bit. But let's just get into it. Opening drive. I know you have a lot to say this morning. I know you do. So let's hear it. Okay? Let's make it appropriate so we can read it on the air, all right? case you missed the announcement yesterday, Mike Star Market, they've got the brat flavors up. Top. Got 4 of them to choose from. Pickle with cheese and bacon, jalapeno with bacon. You got a taco one, and then of course the main Cave Light. A couple of the snack sticks are up there too. The pizza one, which is fantastic. The sausage pizza with mozzarella in there. They also got the garlic parmesan sticks over there too. So head on over to Mike Star Market, west side of Eau Claire. Grab yourself some brats, and well, you're helping out Backyard Dreams over there too. That's the main thing. You're helping out Backyard Dreams. So big thanks to Mike Star Market for working with us there. Fantastic. Brewers sure seem to be going into the danger zone here a little bit. You even got G-Man not even knowing what the heck you guys are doing. G-Man said, Captain, now I don't even have an idea what the Brewers are doing right now. I don't either, man. Brandon's mom, we all know she's a big Brewers fan, right? Brandon's mom, good morning. Hey, big Brewer fan here. Are they trying to pee us off right now? Oh my God. Week of last year going into the new season, whomever said that should be gone. Another thing, Brewers brass are morons. They essentially blame Burns for them not making the playoffs. Huh. It was all David Stearns after he traded Josh Hader. Yeah, keep them coming, man, because when I first heard that clip and I'm watching it, I'm like, okay, kind of knew that there was going to be a little animosity or a little bit of like upset between Hader and the Brewers with their not being able to after the arbitration was awarded to the Brewers. Kind of thought, okay, maybe a little bit of bad blood there, whatever, it's gonna happen. Maybe fly on by, give it a little bit. Bygones be bygones. And I get I mean arbitration. The whole process seems dumb because okay, you've got the team and the player that aren't agreeing. At least, I guess, in one part, at least, this allows players to get pay raises, but at the same time, then when you have to go to a hearing, the team essentially has to go in there and make their case why their player doesn't deserve to be paid as much as the player thinks, and kind of like trying to lower his stock and really piss off the player. So I get it. I mean, you get into a situation like that. It's like, okay, you have. I mean, if you get to the hearing, the team has to like make a case of why this player doesn't deserve this much money. Well, you have to. It's all about the negatives. But to go out there and say, to go out there and say that they put Corbin Burns at the forefront of not making the postseason last year. you know, Matt Arnold came out with a statement after the Corbin Burns little when he was talking to the media and such, and it was a very typical PR GM type of statement. We value Corbin Burns. He's going to be a great player for us. Blah 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 blah. I want to hear from Mark Attanasio. I want to hear from Mark Attanasio, Brewers owner right now, and what he has to say about Corbin Burns' comments that somebody in that arbitration meeting told him or put him at the forefront of missing the postseason. I want the owner's reaction. I want to hear from Mark Attanasio. I don't want him ignoring this. I don't want a general statement released because this is absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And I don't fault Corbin Burns one bit for being irate in this thing. He has a right to be this upset. Will it linger into the season? I don't know. I hope not. You know, we're Brewers fans, most of us. Some maybe Twins fans and such, but you hope it doesn't kind of linger in and affect his play, because now I really hope Corbin Burns goes out there, wins 20 some games, wins that Triple Crown, just goes out there and lights it up. Just kind of, maybe flipping the bird a little bit to them. You know what I mean? Like, I always say player over team. That's what I always say, like, when it's coming to this, Rodgers thing and whatever. But in this case, I've got Corbin Burns side in this whole thing, because this is, I, I can't believe somebody actually went out and said that, allegedly. And I get where Corbin Burns went out and said, yeah, there's the relationship has definitely changed. There's no doubt about it. Really, it's changed. You think? I want to hear from Mark Anasio, and not in a paper statement, not in a release statement. I want you in front of the camera. This is your team. You own this team. How do you let something like that happen? Stand up there, take the questions, and don't just get up there and say, that's a question for Matt Arnold. That's a question for Matt Arnold. I really can't say, I don't know. That's more of a question for Matt Arnold. I don't want to hear that. The responsibility lies with you. And if that happened, I'd be trying to figure out who in the world said that. And maybe even making some changes into some decisions here. Because that is absolutely... How do you even say that to a guy who was your best player last year? Your best starting pitcher on the roster? Your only shot with him and Brandon Woodruff and Freddie Peralta to maybe even get to the postseason or sniff a division? Last couple of years here, Packers and Brewers have a lot more in common than maybe we think in terms of franchise mismanagement in a lot of areas. And let's just hope that Jimmy Haslam doesn't get that 25% share of the Bucks or whatever the heck it is, because, oh, Nelly. It stinks. It stinks. I want to say more words than just stinks, but I can't, because I'll get in trouble. I think you all know where I'm getting at. Now you got other fan bases, like, all right, let's go get Corbin Burns. He doesn't want to be there. Let's make a trade. Let's acquire Corbin Burns. Now you got all that out there. And I kind of feel bad for Craig Counsell, because he's the one now. I mean, he's not just a coach where he's like, all right, coming up with, strategies or anything like that. He's got to manage these players, like their personalities and the player themselves. And he's kind of put in that spot, I believe, in my opinion. Now he's like, okay, I got to get Corbin Burns focused. I gotta say the right stuff in front of my bosses out in the media, but now I got to go in the clubhouse and I got to get Corbin Burns. I got to try to figure this out. I got to try to manage this. I got to get him, focused on playing the game and dominating the game and such. But, I want to hear from Anasio. I want to hear from Matt Arnold in front of I don't want him to release a statement. I want him to go up there and take questions and answer them. And not this whole, yeah, that's a part of an arbitration process. We're going to keep that in-house. Bull. think you deserve to tell a fan base that has a dedicated fan base for a small market team what your vision is. What is your plan? Because right now in the last year, you've had some. That's not just Matt Arlo. David Stearns is a part of this too. You've had some very, very questionable decisions and moves. And that's why I first want to hear from the owner. Why is this going on? I mean, are you just phoning it in now? You know, the other day there's talk about putting some money into AmFam Field for improvements and such. But what is going on with player management? And that's what disappoints me more is like, you know, I've told this story before. When I was at would it have been 2011? Game 5 against the Diamondbacks, that postseason game. Walk-off, Tony P, Niger Morgan. And, you know, Brewers win. They move on. AmFam Field was electric. Confetti was falling down. Players were on the field, running on the field, celebrating. One of the loudest cheers came when the camera put it on, when the scoreboard camera put it on. Mark Ananasio, one of the loudest cheers there. And at that point, I think it was just recognition from a fan base saying, thank you to an owner who looked like he was dedicated into building a team, trying to win, spending a little bit of money. At that point, it was a recognition like, thank you. That's gone. That's gone now. I don't know what else to say. Couple texts coming up here. $10.7 million for a Cy Young award-winning pitcher, and they didn't even want to pay him that. Only $600K. Wow, why not just pay him the 10.7? He won a Cy Young award. If I were Burns, every start until I was traded. Oh, where'd it go there? If I were Burns, every start until I was traded, I'd just lob in all my pitches until pulled. To show them how someone can be a real reason why you don't make the postseason. You know, and this is why I didn't want to even bring up the stadium fund thing. I'm not making this political. So anything that's political, I'm not bringing it up. Living a Dream Jeff. Good morning, Dan. Of course, it's no, that's an old text. See, I'm trying to do it on this tablet here thing, but sometimes it doesn't load up. Okay, here we go. Living Dream Jeff. Brewers lost GM, traded all-star closer, pissed off a Cy Young starter, doesn't do anything in the offseason, and the owner won't show up at FanFest. Mark doesn't give two tips about the people who are the fans and support the team, and kills everyone at games with outrageous prices for concessions. C-Bomb, the way Mark Anasio has been running this team, do you think he's trying to tick off the fan base enough to not get funding for the stadium? I don't know. I'm not going to go with the political side of this thing. You know, the part of it is, and I'll let Brandon, but there was he's got other interests now. He's into a soccer team and all that sort of stuff. I mean, is he kind of just like losing interest in being a baseball owner? Being a Brewers baseball owner? Is he just not invested as much because of his other interests? I don't know. I want to hear from him, though. All right, let's take a quick break. We'll get back to some more of your comments. Please don't try to make this political. Save that for a political show over there. We'll get to the Aaron Jones. So I'm trying to find some numbers here, and I don't know if this is 100% accurate, but some of the things I've been reading here for Aaron Jones' new contract is it almost makes it sound like Aaron Jones took a pay cut. I'll kind of explain that here in a little bit, but that's we don't have the exact numbers that are out there yet, but it almost looks like he might have taken a pay cut. Wow, I mean that's Aaron Jones. If that's the case, again, I don't know if that's accurate, but if that's the case, Aaron Jones was already a fan favorite. That probably just moved him up big time in the stratosphere amongst fans. All right, we'll be back after these words. we can mark off another day in the Aaron Rodgers pool. So no 14th, no 15th, no 16th. If you still want to get in, just hit me up with the dates. We're doing that pool to see when we're going to finally know about the decision from Aaron Rodgers. Kind of like a baby pool over there. The first up, I mean, the 21st is the first date that we've got people signed up for, and that's on Tuesday. G-Man, Greg, Tyler, Corey. So I kept you over there at the 22nd. So, but get those on in if you want to kind of participate. You get it right, we're going to send you a prize package. Maybe I'll include some of those brats from Mike's Star Market there. Okay, we'll get back to the Brewers chat with Corbin Burns coming up here. But I wanted to get to the Aaron Jones signing in case you missed it. Literally just happened at 6 o'clock this morning. Adam Schefter breaking it that Aaron Jones and the Packers agreeing to a resolution, as he called it. He'll be staying in Green Bay after the Packers and his agents reached an agreement on an $11 million salary for the 2023 season that includes $8.52 million signing bonus. And when I was reading some of the numbers and kind of comparing it to what his previous current contract had, it almost made it sound like that Aaron Jones took a pay cut. And during the break there, I saw something up from Ian Rappaport, and he's kind of insinuating it too that Aaron Jones took a pay cut for this year. Says that they agreed on a reduced salary of $11 million this season. Also, because when you talk about making $11 million this year, that doesn't. It's a weird thing with the signing bonus. So he's making 11, but 8.52 of that is coming from that signing bonus. That's why he's probably going to have a low, yearly salary for this year because that signing bonus they all get right up front. Aaron Jones was scheduled to make $16 million in cash this year. His cap hit was up around a little over $20 million for this year. That's why there was that feeling like, okay, you either have to really restructure that or release him. According to Ian Rappaport, Jones remains under contract for next season at $12 million, which wasn't touched in this new contract. So, yeah, reading a little bit more here. From Ian Rappaport, NFL Network, the 29-year-old taking a pay cut to remain in Green Bay likely indicates the Packers were prepared to cut him if he didn't agree to the $5 million shave. The team's leverage underscores the continuing decline of the running back market and the multitude of options available to clubs this offseason, both in free agency and the draft. All right. Aaron Jones, he was already pretty darn high in the Packers fan, power rankings of favorite current player and such. Let's be real. This probably really cemented him. If he's not one, he's really darn close to being number one. This is a guy that I remember talking about in OTAs and mini camps last year. He didn't have to be there. He didn't have to show up. He had a new deal. He had a contract. He one of the higher paid players under. He didn't have to be there, and especially some of those practices at the end where they dismissed veterans. He was still there for some of them. He didn't have to do it. You want to talk about being a leader? And you want to talk about, for a lot of them were upset that Rodgers wasn't at those practices. Aaron Jones was. He was showing up. He was working out. If he doesn't get viewed as one of the leaders of this team, I know he wore the captain patch this year on his jersey. Start paying attention to what 33 is. He is absolutely one of the top leaders on his team. He leads by example. I mean, look at the end of this last year. You could tell that guy was in pain. He was dinged up with that ankle injury. He's going out there. Didn't really hear a whole lot about it. You heard more fans kind of like, "Why aren't we giving the ball more to Aaron Jones? Give it more to Aaron Jones." Dude was pretty banged up. So now, does this mean anything in terms of Rodgers? I don't think so. Green Bay had to figure out cap space. Goody had already said. Now, the interesting part in there is in that NFL Network report there is that the Packers were prepared or thinking about at least releasing him. And Goody had said in his presser that, they expected Jones to stay around, would have to do some restructuring. I don't know if they had kind of a change, and maybe they were looked at like, we don't want to keep putting money on the credit card and that sort of thing. But the fact that he took a pay cut this year for $5 million, man. Now, Green Bay was heading into this season at about $6.5 million over the cap. You could say, well, subtract 5 from that. It doesn't necessarily work that way. Again, it's going to be based off the guaranteed money portion, and then you got to divide the signing bonus and all that sort of stuff. But it will be taking some stuff off, or it will be taking some of that money cap there. They still got a lot more to do, though. A lot. Hey, Aaron. Other Aaron. You want to come back and play? You should be up next on that thing. Figure it out. All right. We'll get back to this a little bit later on. We got Dr. Crow coming up just past 7 o'clock for Inside the Training Room. We'll talk to him about Giannis's wrist and some other injuries going on over there. What's up, Morg?
Hey, happy weekend eve.
How you doing?
You got any big plans for the weekend?
No. You?
No, as in you're happy you got nothing going on, or as in want, crickets and sad music?
I'm fine. I'm
Yeah?
perfectly fine with it. Yep.
Little recharge action going on?
Not enough time for a recharge.
How do you feel about Ant-Man? You going to go see that? No?
No.
You're not?
I'm not one of those people.
You're not a superhero movie guy?
No.
Okay, just checking.
I did ask Veronica if she wanted to go see 80 for Brady.
And?
It was a joke. No. I will not go to that. She hates Tom Brady, too.
Okay.
She didn't even know they made a movie. And I said that he produced it. She's like, wow, egotistical much?
So that was an easier no for both of you guys?
Yeah.
Aw,
Yeah.
Match made in heaven.
Yeah.
You share
Hudson
a hatred for
really
Brady.
hates Tom Brady.
So you're raising him right? Is that what you're saying?
He learned that from his mom. So.
Okay. All right. Did you hear the Away from the Football Field about the Make-A-Wish donation?
From
Jordan?
Michael Jordan, yeah, $10
right?
million.
That's pretty classy. Make-A-Wish said that was the single biggest individual donation they've ever gotten.
Yeah.
So he just kind of a class act, right? All the way around.
That won't help my case with Hudson, though. So
No?
No, he's a LeBron guy to the death.
Yeah,
so.
But do you think that's because generationally that's who he's seen? I mean, just because you grow up in that, it's kind of like if you grow up in the 90s, that's the best music.
Yeah.
If you're an 80s kid, then you think 80s is the best era. It's like those formative years, whatever you grow up with, it's not the same as watching footage of Jordan because you didn't do it real like he is with LeBron.
It's his because I'll go back to it. He got a Happy Meal toy of LeBron, and that's how it started.
So really, it's McDonald's.
Yep.
So
if he would have gotten a toy of Michael Jordan, maybe it'd be all different.
Now, what is it like when he watches real-time stuff with you guys now, like the Packers? Obviously, his namesake is Hudson. You can show him on game footage, but you're talking about leaders and 20 on and off the field and that kind of stuff, and Aaron Jones and all of that. So what does he gravitate to when you guys watch teams play real-time now? Do you and him find yourself like kind of latching onto the same stuff, dad and kid, or do you like to steer him in a certain direction?
No, I mean, like, he's a big Giannis fan.
So is my niece. My middle niece is like a crazy Giannis fan.
He's more into hoops right now, so he knows all the Bucks starters.
Now, I'll say this, as a dad or as parents, you and Veronica, who do you want him to look up to?
Oh, you're making me pick?
Yep. Like if you could pick
between mom or dad, or just an athlete?
no
Oh, okay.
athletes, you and mom pick, because obviously Brady's out, so he's
Yeah.
not looking up to Brady.
Giannis is the perfect one.
He is, isn't
He
he?
is the absolute perfect one.
The thing that I like about Giannis is I really think you don't have to be a basketball fan. What he's done for the game is bring people to it because of the way he is. And that goes back to your being a leader by example.
Mhm.
You can't declare yourself a leader. You can't walk into the room like the Kool-Aid man. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's your actions and it's your integrity and your character that speaks louder. And then people will gravitate to you because you're that way, not
Mhm.
because you demand that they do and announce that you're the leader. You
Right.
have to really show that and become it. And I think Giannis does that. And I think is making a lot of basketball fans in the process.
And
so.
I mean, just like his overall mindset and attitude,
Yeah.
sort of thing.
And the way he dunks Oreos, like how charming is that guy, right?
Yeah.
I want to sit down and have Oreos with Giannis.
Or get 50 cheeseburgers from Culver's.
That a boy.
That too. So.
Butter burgers are where it's at.
Alrighty, you have a good weekend.
Hey, happy Friday, you guys.
Yeah, you too.
80 for Brady then, Saturday?
No.
It's a date. It's a date.
All right, second hour kicking off on Friday morning of February 17th. Appreciate y'all tuning in however you may be tuning in from. We'll get back to some more Brewers chat here with Brandon Berg in just a few minutes. We'll get back to some more Packers chat with the Aaron Jones new contract as well. We'll break that down as more numbers are starting to come on through here. We got a little cream of the crop. We got some regional stuff to be talking about. We kick off this hour as we usually do every Friday with our good friend Dr. Crow from Chippewa Valley Orthopedics and Sports Medicine for our Inside the Training Room. And Austin, first thing I got to lead off with is Giannis last night leaving the game due to a sprained wrist. They're calling it now. X-rays were negative, but with a player like Giannis, and a sprained wrist and such, kind of like how serious could that injury be? Is that a lingering type of injury? Could it be, or is it pretty minor?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what any MRI results show us. So I'm sure he's going to be getting one, and they can take a look at it. So, I mean, like a lot of injuries, there's a huge spectrum. Generally speaking, if the initial films are negative and if an MRI doesn't show a lot of structural issues, it should be a relatively short-lived and thing that resolves completely. Now, like all injuries, there are ones that are kind of still, quote, just sprains, but can be much more serious. And there are a lot of complex ligaments in the wrist that if they're injured can lead to long-term problems. The good news is those usually are associated with really, real much more significant injuries. So my suspicion is this is going to be more of a mild wrist sprain, probably bother him for a couple weeks, but really shouldn't have a huge effect on how things progress. So again, time will tell, and I don't know if they released any of my results yet. They would comment on that if there's something more significant. So my guess is again it should be pretty mild.
And probably good timing with the All-Star break coming up this week. So he's going to have, probably not, I would assume maybe not even play this weekend, but have a few days off to recover from that.
Yeah, absolutely. That'll be beneficial.
I want to go back to the Super Bowl here just to kind of revisit. So Patrick Mahomes, obviously, we talked about him leading up to that game with that high ankle sprain, and he looked like he re-aggravated that thing right before halftime. And I know he said after the game that it was a grade 2 high ankle sprain. Is there, and he said, he'll be ready for OTAs. It just might affect his golf game this summer here. But the fact that he re-aggravated it, does that make it any worse, or does it affect anything with the recovery time or recovery for him?
Not likely, unless it actually really significantly increased the number of, fibers, if you will, that were involved. So that's kind of just, I know we've touched on this in the past with injuries. We grade them out as, 1 through 3. 1 being just mild, kind of just a couple little fibers. 3 is complete. Anything in the middle is a 2. So 2 is pretty variable. So anytime you have an injury where there's some fibers intact, that by definition is a 2, because 3 indicates it's a complete. So, it's possible that he worsened it a little bit, but it does tell you there are some fibers that are still there. And as long as that joint remains stable, being the high ankle, it should recover fully. And so my suspicion is that's why he was able to keep going on. Because if it was a high grade, grade 2, if you will, so kind of like a subset within the grade 2, I wouldn't have been shocked if they'd done that tightrope procedure on him, especially with the Super Bowl, being about the biggest event there is in sports. So my suspicion is it was a lower grade 2, and that really should hopefully. And the fact, when you saw him play, yeah, after that re-injury, he was certainly a little bit hobbled, but he moved around reasonably well. So my hope is that he bounces back and doesn't have any long-term issues from it.
Is there something to the fact of like adrenaline, kind of running through? Does that, we hear about that, like the adrenaline was running through, didn't feel the pain or anything like that. Is that a real thing?
Yeah, absolutely. In certain circumstances, right? If you have if you have a broken leg, you can't adrenaline through that, right? Your leg's broken, you can't play on it, right? So there are injuries that are more mild. Some examples would be like an ankle sprain, an AC joint injury where there's enough structural integrity where it's stable. And sometimes people can push through stuff and you really start to feel the effects later. Any people that have played sports have found that fact where you go through the game, you seem like you're okay, and then you get home afterwards and wow, my knee or shoulder sore. And sometimes that's the way injuries present. So people will occasionally come into clinic and be like, yeah, I kind of dinged up my shoulder, didn't think much of it. After the game, it hurt a lot more. That's just because the quote adrenaline's flowing and you just kind of put it in the back burner and push through it. And again, some things you can safely do, some things not as much. The body is pretty darn good at alerting us though when something's more serious, and you try to put weight on there to use it and your body's like, nope, not going to do it. And then that's certainly a red flag.
got to ask you about your guy Dalvin Cook. So he is undergoing, or probably did already, shoulder surgery. What I was reading here, he apparently broke it in 2019. I mean, and, I'm not good at math, but it's 2023 right now here, Austin. So I mean,
Yeah.
so if he did it in 2019 and now he's having surgery on it, why the 4 years after that, do you think?
That's a great question. I've been asking that for a while. So they didn't really disclose that it was a broken shoulder. So it almost certainly is going to be one of two things. Something called a bony Bankart lesion. So when you injure your shoulder, because he's at shoulder instability or dislocation. So the ball is coming out of socket. When it comes out of the socket, invariably you have injury to the labrum. Occasionally, as it goes over, it doesn't just injure the labrum. It'll take a little bit of bone with it, and we call that a bony Bankart. So it's a little sliver of bone. The other thing is when the ball comes out, the head, the humeral head, which is the ball part, is softer than the socket side. So it'll dent the back of it, and we call that a Hill-Sachs. Sometimes people call it a Hill-Sachs fracture. So either one of those things, because if he had a severe shoulder fracture, he would not have been able to get back and play. So it is almost certainly one of those two things. So to bring it back to your original question, why wait so long? I don't know, because he's been having shoulder instability since he was in college. In fact, he's dislocated at least 2 or 3 times on the Viking team. And I would always ask myself, why is he not getting his shoulder stabilized? Because the studies are very clear. The odds of him dislocating again were almost 100%, and it proves it to be the case because it kept coming back out. So every offseason I was waiting to hear in the news, yep, Dalvin Cook had shoulder surgery. So I am surprised it took this long. The good news is it's a highly successful surgery, and odds are he'll be back playing at a high level. Ultimately we'll see if that's for the Vikings. That's going to be a big offseason question for us. But, I think he should bounce back and bounce back well. So it did make me wonder why wait so long, and I don't know if we have an answer for that.
Yeah, and I guess what the other part of that I was going to ask you kind of already answered. Was that the reason why his shoulder kept kind of popping out of socket or something like that? Because you're right, it seemed like every year, once or twice, we were talking about a shoulder issue with that Dalvin Cook, but he kept playing through that thing too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it was a head scratcher for me. And because I take care of this exact problem pretty frequently, and when I counsel patients, I say, look, do you want to stay at this level of activity? And we can look at some different factors. But I mean, he's certainly, what he does for a living in the injury pattern he clearly had. I mean, his risk for redislocation was basically 100%. So I has to be a personal decision that he made where he said, look, I'm not going to do surgery. And then eventually people often will have one more injury, and then they'll just have a come to Jesus moment and say, okay, fine, I can't deal with this again. And so clearly he crossed that threshold this season.
Sticking with shoulders, Dr. Crow, Chippewa Valley Orthopedics and Sports Medicine, joining us here this morning. Brewers pitcher Aaron Ashby, manager Craig Counsell just said that it's probably going to be a couple of months that he's going to be out. They're just calling it shoulder inflammation, and that he's got some pain in that. I know we've talked a lot about shoulder inflammation and such, but when it comes to a pitcher, Austin, and you hear shoulder inflammation, is there something that kind of jumps out to you right away? What could be the cause of that?
Yeah, I mean, there's several. And the most common would be inflammation in the bursa or the rotator cuff tendon. That's a pretty common thing. We see that a lot in both athletes and lay people. So that is something that we will come across very frequently. Generally, it doesn't last that long. You get a little bit more concerned with maybe something like internal impingement. That's where when pitchers throw and they bring their arm really far back and then forward, that motion will cause rubbing or impingement between the rotator cuff and the labrum. And so people can get some inflammation both at labral area and the rotator cuff. So those are two different possibilities that would jump out at me. Certainly the internal impingement has the potential to have more actual structural damage to the shoulder, which is why it could lead to longer period of time out. So that would be my assumption. It's more along those lines. But yeah, I mean, when they're saying a couple of months for inflammation, it certainly at least makes you raise your eyebrows and wonder if there's some structural stuff going on with that as well, because inflammation alone, often it's anti-inflammatories, icing, stretching, and people bounce back pretty quickly. So clearly a couple months is longer than you expect. That being said, the demands that the pitchers put in their shoulders are more than almost anyone else in the world. So you got to give them a little bit of leeway on that.
Last question for you. I wanted to ask you about your general thoughts on this. I don't know if you saw the comment leading up to the Super Bowl, but we got the combine coming up here in a few weeks. But the Players Association Executive Director Smith, he wants to get rid of the scouting combine, and this was one of the quotes he had to say. I wanted to get your opinion on it. He said, "Think about the NCAA and the NFL structure a combine during what should be every football player's last semester in college. They kind of go on. Who decided that it was a good idea to take your son and have him exclusively try out for the NFL's exclusive way of getting into the league? As soon as you show up, you have to waive all of your medical rights, and you not only have to sit there and endure embarrassing questions, and I think that's horrible, and I don't want to poo-poo any of that, but would you want your son to spend hours inside of an MRI machine and then be evaluated by 32 separate team doctors who are, by the way, are only doing it for one reason? And what's that reason? To decrease your draft value. So he's kind of started, and he went on to say that he's supports the prospects not needing to surrender their medical rights as part of a combine process. I was curious, what are your general thoughts when you hear that?
Yeah, I mean, certainly there's some truth in what he's saying. I mean, one of the big things of the kind, and I personally have never went there, but I have friends who are physicians and team physicians that have went, and that's one of the things they do. I mean, they look at these athletes and see what injuries they have. I mean, on one hand, I get it, that the anger you'd have with, like, look, we're just up there and we feel like a piece of meat going under inspection, right? On the flip side, when these teams are investing in millions of dollars, for them not to do their due diligence and look to see if you have injuries, I think it's a little bit disingenuous to pretend like that's all they're trying to do. I mean, if you come out clean, if you had a previous injury, you come out clean, that could increase your draft value. So teams need to understand what they're getting. And so, I mean, if you look at your favorite team, right, for you, the Packers and the Vikings, and you had a high draft pick with a real significant injury, would you just say, let's assume it's healed and I'm okay with that? No, I mean, you want to spend a first-round pick on a player that may not be fully recovered. Now, is that, do you feel bad for that athlete themselves? Yes, but if the injury is still there and hasn't healed, you're not changing that fact. And so I think that's one of the big things. I mean, are there athletes that go and make a name for themselves during the combine? Of course, there's every year you see a guy who runs a 4.2 something, and all of a sudden he jumps off the board. So, I mean, there's positives there as well. But I do understand the concept of, like, look, this is just, they feel like they're really just under the microscope, and they are. I mean, those guys go there and they get MRIs, X-rays, CTs, and that all happens in a relatively rapid fashion. So yeah, I'm sure it's a bit of a whirlwind for those guys. But I mean, let's be honest, injuries are part of sports, and recovering from those and healing from those correctly are what get the athletes back to where they should be. And if they don't, it's going to affect their value, and that's something that teams have to be able to assess. So if the combine itself goes away, it'd be foolish to think that all of a sudden these athletes aren't going to get evaluated. That's just not going to happen. I mean, whether they have their own pro day or whatever is going to happen, or the other alternative is athletes have an injury and it's just a big question mark, and that's going to negatively affect their value. Mm-hmm. So I don't think there's any way around that. I mean, if you have an injury, you have an injury, and it has to be addressed and evaluated.
And, and I know it's just a few cases, but hasn't there been times too where doctors have actually found maybe something life-threatening with a player or condition they didn't even know about? Like, I remember basketball, I think it was Isaiah Austin from Baylor. He had declared for the draft, but then I'm gonna butcher the name. It was Marfan syndrome diagnosis. I think he had. And that's the case where some of these players may not know they have something wrong with them, but they find out what's these combine processes.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the Hamlin situation with Buffalo has put a big spotlight on cardiac stuff, and that's one of the big things that is assessed. So there's something called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy that young athletes can have. That's probably one of the leading causes of sudden cardiac death in young athletes, and that can be not perfectly, but it can be assessed on an EKG and then an echo of the heart. And so a lot of the D programs, every athlete that comes through the door gets an EKG and an echo to look for that exact problem. And I know when I was at Virginia, we had a couple of athletes that did end up didn't know it. And so it doesn't mean that they can't play. You certainly counsel them, and athletes choose not to, because let's be honest, I mean, the risk factor of running out on a court and dropping over dead, that scares most people. And so there are times where you do catch things like that. And so Marfan syndrome is a connective tissue that can have a high risk of what's called aortic dissection. So that can be a fatal event. So yeah, I mean, there are times where you catch something and it works both ways. But yeah, I don't think the combine is going anywhere. And if it does change, it will only change the way they're evaluated. It won't make it go away. It's a piece of it that's just going to be there.
Dude, appreciate it as always, catching up with you and learning a lot. Dr. Crow, you have yourself a fantastic weekend, buddy, and we'll chat again soon.
All right, take care.
You got it. There you go. There's Dr. Crow. Big thanks as always with him breaking it down here. We got to take a quick break, and then we're going to get to Brandon here. It might be a little airing of grievances coming up after these words. All right, bottom of the hour there again. Big thanks to Dr. Crow for hopping on here this morning. Always love chatting with him. I got to adjust the camera here because
I stood up and I made you have to change thing around. I'm sorry.
Yeah, because we're both standing up now because this might be a little bit of a Festivus in February here. You and I were talking a little bit texting last night and I didn't say anything that you were talking because I wanted you
Yeah,
to do it yourself here, because you are probably the smartest Brewers person I know personally.
Well, that's kind.
That's why, like, whenever there's a move made or there's something, I always kind of go to Brandon. When he's my Brewers guy to get some input and insight and thoughts and all that sort of stuff. So I'm very curious to hear what you have to say about this thing. Again, if you didn't hear it, I guess we could play it again. I already played it this morning, but it was Corbin Burnes, and I think we all kind of knew that there was going to be a little bit of bad blood or maybe a little disappointment with the arbitration process.
Yes.
That the 700,000 whatever. I don't know if you would say the same thing, but I think to me the most damning thing to come from yesterday was the comment that Burnes said that essentially the Brewers put him at the forefront of not making the postseason last year, which I don't know how to respond to that, to be honest with you. And I guess I'll let you go first, but I'll tell you this, like, one thing that I want to see now in the next very soon, I want to see Mark Ananasio answer for this, and not do what he kind of did last year. Well, that's a question for David. No, to me now, if that actually did happen where somebody from your organization said that, I feel like the owner has to respond to that now. But I'll hand it off to you.
Yesterday was pitchers and catchers report, and at this point, pretty much pitchers and catchers around the league
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of position players too. And normally, up until yesterday morning, I was thinking like, oh, I'm sure we'll talk a little Brewers, and
Mm-hmm.
this is the time of year where you've got 30 fan bases that are kind of trying to talk themselves into, oh, well, you know what, maybe we can be all right. And for the Brewers, that wasn't very hard to make that case for. Certainly the Brewers don't enter this year as the favorite in the NL Central. That belongs to the St. Louis Cardinals. But, you could kind of squint and see a way where the Brewers could be in the playoffs. The starting rotation still, I would put up there with anybody.
Mm-hmm.
You could make a case that some of the moves they made on offense, maybe can help the team be a little bit better there. The bullpen doesn't have a lot in the way of known commodities, but there's a lot of interesting talent there with some of the guys. So you could look and see, you know what? Coming into this year, feeling like, okay, this team has a shot to do something, and
banning the shift maybe helps. Maybe
there's some rule changes, and maybe some of the young guys that are going to get a shot, maybe they're going to provide a nice spark for the offense, that kind of stuff. And well, that all changed yesterday. And I think for me the biggest thing with this, and I'm with you. The whole taking, going to arbitration for with Burnes over $740,000, like. That was annoying, but to me, that's not the egregious part of this. I mean, that's happened before. I think the Braves went to arbitration with Max Fried over $200,000. One of these years. So, like, that was annoying, but it's just like, okay, like, you're not exactly giving up. You're not exactly doing anything to quell the vibes here in recent years that maybe the Brewers have been a little bit cheap.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm with you. To me, I have no reason to believe what Corbin Burnes said was false. I believe him.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we're ever going to hear on the Brewers side, well, did we say that or not? Because, it's probably just...
They're probably not going to want to admit that, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's probably just, yeah. But just strictly looking at it from a baseball team perspective, I don't understand the upside. Like, I feel like you could already make a good enough case for your costs going in there, the fact that, the point that, the Brewers had submitted at like 10.01 million, which was the same amount that Shane Bieber with Cleveland had agreed with Cleveland before arbitration. And I think Bieber and Burnes have some comps. I think the Burnes camp said that also pointed to Bieber and said, like, some of the raises he got, maybe he should be in line for. So I think both teams kind of looked at Shane Bieber, who was won Cy Young in 2020, as a comp for Corbin Burnes, but just in different ways.
Right.
So, but to hear that, it seems like it's the equivalent of taking a flamethrower to kill an ant. Like, what? Like, I don't understand the upside. Like,
yeah.
The Brewers won the arbitration case. So does that mean, like, right now that the Brewers front office is like high-fiving going, yes, we nailed it. This is exactly what we wanted to happen? No.
Right.
Because even if this didn't get out, say Corbin Burnes doesn't say anything about this, Corbin Burnes still knows.
Right.
Like, it just, I don't know. It just seems like it's way too heavy-handed and not needed. Was it worth it? Was it worth doing this? And look, even before yesterday, I think any pretty rational Brewers fan wasn't expecting Corbin Burns to re-sign with the team once his contract's up at the end of next year.
Right.
Corbin Burns is going to go into free agency, and barring something crazy happening between now and then for him, he's going to make $300 million. He's going to get $30 million a year from somebody.
Yep.
And that somebody's not going to be Milwaukee. It wasn't going to be 2 days ago, and it's not going to be today. But why put yourself in a spot where you're going to make that something that may not be great even worse?
Mm-hmm.
And
I'm really curious to hear the reason why they thought Burns was fault. You know what I mean?
And I once I saw that, because I did do a little bit of, I don't say research last night, but just kind of, because there's a few things I'm like, okay, this might be worth bringing up. And you mentioned that, and I looked in August. Corbin Burns had a rough August. He was 1-2 with an 4.81 ERA and 6 starts. That's very much not Corbin Burns.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't look start by start, but that could be maybe 1 or 2 bad starts. In September and October, he was 3-2 with a 3.3 ERA and 7 starts. Again, not quite at the Corbin Burns level, but again, that's also not like, you're a bum, what are you doing? Like,
that wasn't Corbin Burns in his second year when he was,
you sort of served enough gopher balls because
ended up in single A or the pitching lab.
Because before he developed the cutter and when teams are teeing off on the four-seamer, that's, to me, I look at those numbers and you can have a bad month in there. In September and October, I'm sorry, a 3.3 ERA and 7 starts. That's not bad.
Right.
Like, that's giving you a chance to win.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't fully agree with that, especially when you look at the offense and I don't think any Brewers fans say this now. In August and September, they had their third worst OPS of the year. Mm-hmm. The worst was March and April. They start, because remember, they kind of started a little slow, but they ended the year with 2 of their 3 worst months offensively. And remember, you can say what you want about the Josh Hader trade and, the bullpen giving up leads and stuff. The Brewers didn't do anything to take away from their offense the last 2 months last year.
Right.
The offense just was what it was. And maybe after playing above its head in the middle of the year, really kind of came back down to earth.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't.
The only thing I could think of is was he leading the charge of the Josh Hader, clubhouse?
But again, why air that, knowing that it's just, and it's something else a lot of people have brought up, and most notably yesterday afternoon you could hear on this network, Grant Bills talked about it, about how the Brewers are starting to get a bit of a track record of kind of not treating people well when it comes to some of their players. If you look at them in these things individually, it's not, it's not egregious. You just say oh, that happened. But you look at, obviously, this with Corbin Burns. You go back to last year, some of the comments Lorenzo Cain made after he had, was DFA'd after reaching 10 years and retired.
Mm-hmm.
He had mentioned that just maybe there wasn't some of the respect there that he thought there would be for a veteran with the team.
Mm-hmm.
You go back even a couple years to, the Josh Hader first arbitration case, which was in the spring of 2020, which seems like a lifetime ago.
Right.
And that one was a little bit different because
at $2 million different.
There was actually 2.4 million or
mm-hmm.
2.3. The Brewers went at 4-1, Hader went at 6-4, and that was where the Brewer that was where it almost felt like things kind of changed a little bit with the Hader relationship.
Yeah.
Because
then he wanted to be more of that typical one-inning guy.
Because arbitrators, a lot of times they're looking at your classic baseball counting stats. So you're looking at saves, which you can make a case of. Okay, does a high amount of saves truly determine if you're a great reliever? I'm not sure it does.
Mm-hmm.
In 2018, 2019, the Brewers had deployed Josh Hader as that kind of fireman, use your best reliever in the toughest spots.
Right.
But and Josh Hader was fine with that until Josh Hader was fine being used as a very important reliever until he wasn't being paid like a very important reliever.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also the reports of the Brewers using the infamous Josh Hader tweets during the arbitration case to kind of help with it, and just there's just been a lot that's kind of sprung to life where not that long ago, I think a lot of people, myself included, would have said, you know what, obviously the Brewers, they're never going to spend $300 million. And I don't think any Brewers fans are saying, hey, go do that.
Right.
But there was a case to be made that, but the Brewers, they operate pretty lean as far as they're smart with what they do. You think of that 2018 team, they really value like chemistry and just bringing good people into the clubhouse. It just seems like they've kind of gone away from that these last few years.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's a reason for that or if that's just me having the wrong perception from the outside looking in. But I don't know. Like it's just
you bring
it's just kind of the latest kind of frustrating bit on what's been really. I mean, you go back to honestly kind of one of the roughest parts for the Brewers. It's all been bad since honestly the lockout ended.
Yeah.
I mean, and that was 11 months ago because they were still, in February they were still under. But it's crazy to think like, once that happened and it's just been kind of one thing after another and nothing that's been like gigantically like, oh my gosh, that's ridiculously egregious. But it's just been a lot of things just kind of chipping away.
One thing I mentioned in the first hour, like I brought up, I remember, I was at Game 5, Diamondbacks, Brewers, Tony P hitting the walk-off. And I still remember this to this day. Everybody's on the field celebrating. They're moving on, confetti's falling down. One of the loudest ovations is when the big board or the scoreboard camera went on Mark Anastasio. And that was one of the loudest cheers. And the best way I could describe it was like fans were thankful for an owner, wanting to win.
Yes.
Put out a team to win out there. I feel like that's changed now from a fan's perspective.
It has. Like, remember, we're not that, and again, we're kind of going back to this, recently, Anastasios gotten that vibe of being cheap. And again, I would look back to maybe really mostly last year, I would say. 2020, it's tough for me to, fault anyone for pretty much anything that happened in 2020, just because it was just such a unique year that, I hope to the man upstairs we never have to live through it anyway ever again.
Right, exactly.
But when you go back to last year, and it's, I brought this up before, but it's going to be worth repeating that it's crazy just how in 1 year the court of public opinion has changed of Mark Anastasio. And look, part of that, I mean, a lot of that is his own words and his own doing. And there's certain other things that are going to go with all this thing I'm not going to get into.
Right.
I'm not going to talk about that. So, but to see that right now, the Brewers payroll is down. And I know just talking with some of my friends who are, just as big of Brewers fans as I am, that, they're frustrated because they're looking at this as almost like Brewers fans were looking at 2011 a little bit, where it's like, okay, I think a lot of Brewers fans are realistic and they know, like, you're not going to re-sign Burns, Woodruff, and
we want to take advantage of the cheap pitching that they got right now.
Exactly. You're getting,
it's like paying the rookie quarterback. It's like, it's like the Eagles, you know?
Like, so, and I think Brewers fans, they've already shown it. They're willing to kind of ride the wave. Like, if this team did a little more now to try to maximize 2023 and 2024, knowing that, hey, 2025, 2026, maybe a little lean. I think pretty much every Brewer fan listening would sign up for that. The fact that they would take a big swing at it. And maybe they deal, some of their prospects for, a big hitter and it blows up in their face.
Right.
It's very possible. But I think Brewers fans would look at it and say, you know what? Hey, they tried. They went for it and it didn't work, versus kind of being half pregnant. It's a phrase I use sometimes, but like, either you're pregnant or you're not pregnant. You're not half pregnant. Like, either put your foot in or take your foot out. And the Brewers, it just seems like they're kind of like, well, we think we can be in the race. And you hear, I mean, how much did we hear the phrase, the bites of the apple from David Stearns last year kind of get, taken to task.
Right.
Because you can say what you want about, hey, if you're in the playoffs, you have a chance. And the Phillies, look, they made it to the World Series last year as the 6th seed. But realistically, it doesn't happen a ton. Like,
Nationals did a few years ago, but again,
but look at the talent they had.
Right.
Like, it's not like they were just this collection of bums that caught lightning in a bottle.
Yeah.
They had Juan Soto. They had
Strasburg was pitching out of his mind that year.
They had Scherzer. Like, they had this talent. And it's just frustrating right now as a Brewers fan to see this and to see what I would call a generational pitching staff. Like, I wasn't alive in 1982, so I don't know Don Sutton and Pete Vukovich and those. Like, I didn't experience that, but this is at the very least the best starting rotation they've had since then.
Right.
And remember, that team made a big move too. They made some big moves to kind of go for it too.
Yep.
And it's it's frustrating to see that because it's out there. Like it's out there for them, and it just, I don't know. And I'll bring this up, and this is just my own opinion, because this is something I texted you yesterday, and you talked about Mark Ananasio. To me, in my opinion, this is just, again, for me, someone on the outside looking in, to me, it almost seems like Mark Ananasio is bored with being the Brewers owner, because we're not that far removed from Mark Ananasio going over Doug Melvin's head to talk to Scott Boras about bringing in Kyle Osh and Matt Garza, because he knows, hey, this team needs starting pitching, and he really wants to win. And you can make
because what was always a joke, like if Scott Boras has an age or a player that he needs signed, he would always go to Mark Ananasio.
And look, it's not good for an owner to go over a GM's head to get players and kind of one up them. But at least, if nothing else, you can make the case that shows he's committed to winning. He wants to do what he can to put a good product out on the field. Now, I'm not sure that's the same case. In my opinion, at this point, I feel like Mark Ananasio's got to the point where he's seen what this team can do when he puts the chips in, when he spends the money. He's seen what this team could do when, like in 2015-16, they said, hey, we're going to scale back our payroll as we reset this franchise, but we're going to spend again when the time comes. And for the first few years of that, 2018, 2019, they did. And I also think he sees what this team does when they're kind of in the race, but they're not necessarily going all in. And I think he's decided that, you know what, the best thing financially is the last option I said, which is to kind of be in the race, but maybe not maximize the opportunity. And that's disappointing, because there's a big period of time where, there's a lot of smaller market owners that have had that feeling for a while. You look at the Reds and the Pirates right now. And for a long time, I would defend Mark Ananasio and say, you know what? I don't think he's like that. He wants to win. And I'm always going to be grateful to Mark Ananasio for buying the Brewers in the 2000s and helping the team return to prominence when the future was so unknown under the Selig family. But it's just not, to me, it's just not the same guy.
Yeah, I would agree with you, because, and I defended him a couple years ago because I kept going back. He seemed like, and he was saying the right things. Hey, I want to, win, and and you even go back to last year, Brandon, with the Josh Hader thing, where he was kind of deflecting it. And that's a David question, where it seemed like he wasn't happy about the move, and then he kind of put up that thing about, were they in on Juan Soto? The whole thing.
Yeah.
And you kind of rolled your eyes there, but I think we all did. But he gave that impression that he was kind of, like, that I didn't agree with that. There's no budget. There's nothing like that.
There's no budget yet. He talked about, quote unquote, stretching the budget last year to sign Andrew McCutchen.
Right.
Which is another thing that kind of irked me. Like, this is Andrew McCutchen in 2024 or 2014.
Yep.
This is Andrew McCutchen, late career, now playing back in Pittsburgh on a very light contract after he didn't really do much for the Brewers last year.
Because what did Ananasio say last year? There was 3 guys they had targeted.
Yeah,
and McCutchen was one of them.
I would love
3
to know,
big time players, I think, is what he said.
I would love to know who those other 2 were.
Right.
Because I mean, if they're in that same boat as McCutchen, then I wouldn't classify them as big time players. Not in 2022.
Right.
But it's really frustrating, because for a long period of time, when we were much younger in our lives, the issue with the Brewers was ownership. And the Selig saved baseball in Milwaukee, saved pro baseball in Wisconsin. You can say what you want about Bud Selig, but Bud Selig loves baseball. Bud Selig loves the Milwaukee Brewers. But the team in the later 90s and early 2000s under him was not good. Like, they were not well run. And the change to Mark Ananasio as principal owner, helped change that. And just in general, the ownership, and I think this goes back to maybe the lockout, but I remember someone explaining it in a very good way, because people are like, well, why wouldn't every owner want to win? And why wouldn't every owner do what they could to help their team win? Which is a fair question. But someone, and I really wish I remember who said this, because I would like to get them credit, because I think it's a brilliant observation, is if you look at a lot of these baseball owners, they're really rich. No duh.
Right.
How did they get that way? Well, they were businessmen or business people that were able to make a lot of money, finding ways to maximize revenue while minimizing cost. That's how you run a business.
Right.
Well, if you were successful in, the venture capital world by maximizing profit and minimizing cost, and you now own a baseball team, you're going to probably think, hey, you know what? This is the same way I need to be successful here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's frustrating, because you just want, fans just want, I think.
Is it fair to say, maybe for the newer types, that owners don't necessarily own teams to win championships, that it's to make money?
Probably, because no matter what an owner is going to say, or no matter what,
Unless you're Steve Cohen.
Yeah. No matter what an owner says, or no matter what Rob Manfred said during the lockout, owning a pro sports team, especially a baseball team, is a big money maker.
Mm-hmm.
If it wasn't, you wouldn't have so many people, lining up to buy these franchises in any of the major sports whenever they come available.
Right.
It's crazy how that's said, yet every time a pro sports team is sold or rumored to be sold, it's for way, way, way more money than when they were bought the last time.
Right. We're talking billions now.
We're talking with a B. With a B. And
I get there's some owners, it's like you look at the Bears, it's a family thing. And, I would say that, no, their goal is to try to win and all that sort of stuff. So there's
it's not the case for everybody.
Right.
But for the majority it is. And yeah, it's just frustrating. And it's just such a very interesting time in Brewers history now, with so many things kind of hitting a crossroads.
Your point, and that was the one thing, like, I didn't want to break, because I wanted you to kind of talk about it, where, your opinion is he bored? Is Mark Anasio bored?
Because remember,
right
he's
now?
got more things, before.
Like you mentioned soccer now, too.
He's involved with the European soccer team, which, came up last year and irked a lot of Brewers fans,
the Jackie Robinson ticket stub that he bought at auction right when they were trying to, that one irked a lot of people with the lockout.
Because, and there's just a lot of things that, and again, that's just my opinion. I feel like Mark Anasio right now is a bit bored. Like, I don't know, it just doesn't seem like you see him as much. Like, he's
not invested as much, maybe.
Yes.
Right.
I don't know. That's just one man's opinion. But look, he has a very easy way to kind of change this, public opinion of him if it's something that he really thinks is wrong and really bugs him.
Right. And that's where I want him to talk. I don't want a statement to come out.
And I don't, there's not a lot that Matt Arnold's going to be able to say.
I'm curious. Like, I don't think it was Matt Arnold that was in that arbitration meeting, right?
No, because I'm sure they, like any arbitration, you're hiring a lawyer and you're, now they may have said, hey, this is,
And I get it's like, what are your thoughts on arbitration? Because, like, I understand it. I think it can help a player in some sense.
I also think it's an antiquated system, though.
Right. And it's like, but then you're asking a team to really rip on their own player to try to devalue them. And then you got to tell them next day.
I think there needs to, oh, hey, buddy, we love you here.
Yeah.
Let's put you at the forefront of our, our social media campaign and our advertising campaign for the year.
Right.
After we just said, in this court that we said you were kind of a bum.
Right.
Down the stretch for us.
Yeah.
Allegedly.
At least allegedly, okay. In one instance, it helps players get a pay raise, and some. But in the other part, it's like, but you gotta.
In general, like the baseball salary structure is just really wonky compared to everybody else. Like, you can be a top tier player in the league 2 years in and still be making the minimum,
right?
And your money never goes down in arbitration, which maybe that's a good thing, because if you get injured or something, but it's just. There's just no other system that's like baseball when it comes to how teams are developed, when it comes to how contracts are done. It's just, and
I don't get it. But that's where and I don't know if he will, but I would feel like, from a PR standpoint right now, he needs to go out there and take face.
Yes.
And not deflect again, like, well, that's a question for Matt. At some point the buck has to stop with the owner.
I heard Nick Saban say this once about being a coach, but I think it's the same as being an owner. You are what you allow to happen.
It's a good quote. No.
If you're a coach and you allow your team to play undisciplined, well, that's not on your coordinators or your players. That's on you. If you're an owner and you're allowing these little things to go on, you are what you allow to happen.
Is the person that's in the toughest position right now Craig Counsell?
Yes.
Because at one point that's his boss's decision. but then he's the one that has to manage.
He's the
Corbin
one that has
Burns.
to talk to the media every day about it,
Right.
about decisions he didn't make.
Right.
And he may have, they may have, even go back to the Hater thing, they may have said, hey, we're thinking about doing this. And maybe Craig said, hey, I think we can survive. Or maybe he said, I don't know if that's a good idea.
Right.
But regardless, he's the guy that every year or every day, when the media meets with him, has to answer these questions that he really had nothing to do with.
Right.
And that puts him in a tough spot.
Right. Because he's the one in the clubhouse with,
and he's also, yeah, you're right. He's the one that also has to deal with these players when this stuff comes down, and and these players are saying like, hey, does this franchise really have our back here?
Right, because he's got to be almost a speaking person for the ownership and Matt Arnold, but at the same time he's got to go in that clubhouse and say, hey, Corbin, forget about it. We need you, but try to manage the emotions of the player too. I feel like he's in the toughest spot right now.
I agree.
I feel like he's that guy
He's
in the
middle
middle.
management.
Yeah, he's the guy that's got to play both sides. He's almost like a mediator in itself.
A little bit.
And I know some fans have had some problems with Craig Counsell the last year and a half, and his, decisions, managerial decisions right now. But I don't want to be in his shoes.
Yeah.
At this point, at least right now, I wouldn't want to be in his shoes.
And remember, he's someone that's going into the last year of his contract.
Yeah.
And there was, I think he had talked about like he feels confident something will happen, but what happens if things kind of continue this way?
Does he want to be there? Then?
Exactly. Because Craig Counsell has been very understanding and aware of kind of his role in Milwaukee baseball and Wisconsin baseball. As being someone that born and raised with the organization, came back as a player, now as a manager, has led the team to success not seen since the 80s.
Right.
Like he understands that, but he also probably understands that if things are kind of starting to go sideways, like I don't want to have my name attached to that.
Right. Because honestly, it kind of depreciates his value maybe for other teams.
Sure.
A little bit. Or something like that.
I'm someone that believes if Craig Counsell, if this was his last year with the Brewers, he would be in line for all, pretty much any job he wanted next year as far as the manager goes.
I would agree with that.
Because he is someone that you hear any like national people talk about him, he's very well respected around the league.
I would agree with that. Yep, absolutely. All right, we got to take a quick break and close up the second hour. That was good stuff right there. Your thoughts, you can continue to send them on over. Text it, tweet it, Facebook it. Whatever floats your boat.
Carrier pigeon.
Yeah, that too. We'll be back after these quick messages. All right, we only got about a minute to the top here. So what we're going to do then, coming up in the 8 o'clock, we got a lot of stuff to catch up on. We'll do some regional stuff here because it's postseason. We had a couple upsets in hockey
We did
last night.
Yeah.
Chippewa Chi-High girls losing to Black River
Chippewa
Falls.
Menominee girls got upset by Black River Falls. Eau
And
Claire
then-
Memorial on the boys' side getting upset by Wisconsin Rapids.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll talk about it more then, but it's the postseason, and that's what makes the postseason fun. Look, the higher seeded teams don't always win. If it did, it wouldn't be fun.
Yep. So we'll cover up some of that. I'll get back to the Aaron Jones contract restructure, if you will. Some more details coming out about that, and then we got cream of the crop coming up here as well. So, and of course, I'm sure you still have more thoughts on the Corbin Burns Brewers situation. If you'd like to let us know, keep it clean and non-political with the stadium funding stuff, please. But send those babies on over with a quick text, 715-830-1912, or hit us up on Twitter or Facebook. So I don't even know who I'd pick for cream of the crop right now. I know who I'd pick on the opposite.
I do know who mine is.
Okay.
And it's...
If we did it the opposite, I think we would have the same ones here.
Yes.
But that's not the one that rises to the top. It would be the one that sinks to the bottom there. So like a little pebble. But anyways, we'll get to that coming up in this what should be a crazy busy catch up 8 o'clock hour. So all right. Shot clock's going to cut me off here, so we'll get to that. G-Man quickly said, too, that he's having breakfast, stopping by at Mike's Star Market to buy brats for a cause that means so much to me. Backyard Dreams. Thank you to you. I hope you and your family have a great weekend, G-Man. So,
right back at you.
Yeah. If you haven't heard, the brats are available. 4 of them. 4 flavors there, Brandon. So, and the snack sticks. I will say the Italian sausage mozzarella pizza flavored ones.
That just sounds delicious.
It was awesome yesterday. So, all right, 2 in, 1 more to go. Stick around. We'll be back after these quick news updates. Third hour on this Friday morning of February 17th. Getting ready for the weekend coming up here. It's going to be a busy 8 o'clock hour in our final hour. We're going to get back to some more Brewers talk. If you have not chimed in about the Corbin Burns situation, go ahead and do so with a text, tweet, Facebook message. We're going to get to the Aaron Jones stuff. Dude actually did take a pay cut to stay in Green Bay. As Andrew Brandt had just tweeted out a few minutes ago. Got to get him back on the show. This is more than the usual cap push out to create more short-term space. He has actually taken $5 million less cash as well. So there you go. Just add more to that, and rightfully so, the aura around Aaron Jones is a fan favorite.
Yeah.
I'm sure Packer fans are going to love to see this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you don't like seeing a guy have to take a pay cut
No.
or anything like that, but obviously he wants to be in Green Bay. He wants to stay in Green Bay.
Doing something for the good of the team.
Mm-hmm. Now, does this mean anything with Rodgers? I doubt it.
Yeah.
I would doubt it because they still had to.
Let's put it this way. If Aaron Rodgers is gone or retired, they're going to still want Aaron Jones there with Jordan Love.
Right. Yep. So we'll get to that. And then we got cream of the crop coming up a little bit later on, but a little bit later than usual because we were talking some Brewers in the previous hour. But we are going through some postseason play for some of the regional sports.
February is flying.
Yeah. And as we kind of teased it beforehand, you were at one of them, and I know our good friend Justice was at the other, but we did have a couple of upsets in playoff hockey last night.
We did. I was at Chip Ice Arena last night for girls hockey regionals, which opening round of the playoffs, which was the second seed Chippewa Falls Menominee hosting the 7th seed Black River Falls. Black River Falls earned a 6-2 win.
Yeah,
it was an impressive effort for Black River Falls. They got outshot and they got outpossessed with the puck, but they made the most of every opportunity they got. I mean, scored 3 goals in the first period, and they have a good goaltender. So that's that made for just kind of a tough recipe for the Sabres to have to kind of climb out of that hole. And it seemed like for Memorial and Rapids, again, I was only being able to see updates from Justice from afar, but it just seemed like kind of a big second period from Rapids kind of turned the tide there.
Right.
And that section is in both boys and girls. I think there's a lot of teams you can make a case for coming out of it. It was that way with the girls. Chippewa Falls Menominee entered the postseason hot. They'd won a lot down the stretch, including being the 1 seed. But on that girls' end, with those final 4, you got Hudson beat Eau Claire area last night. So I mean, you've got several teams I think on that girls' end that can make a case for maybe being the team that comes out of there. And I think that's the same thing on the boys' end too. It was a tough night last night in that way for the Big Rivers. With, you mentioned Memorial North, Hudson beating Chi High. So I think Hudson and D1 is the one team left. D2, obviously, there's still some representation there with
New Richmond.
I think Menominee won too. So, but yeah, and I kind of teased the last hour. Like that's the fun thing about the playoffs. Like, you got to show up and you got to play. Like, you can earn your seed, but at the same time, you have to play the rest of the way to validate your seed.
Right.
And if the playoffs would be boring if just the higher seeded team won every time.
I want to go back a little bit here. I can't remember if it was you or maybe, I think it was you. The Donald and Fall Creek game.
Yeah,
boys basketball.
Well, I mean, it was other people too, but that was part of it.
Because I saw the clip. I think the video clip. You put one on Twitter. McDonald Tuesday night boys picked up a big 68-66 come from behind win over Fall Creek to clinch a share of the conference title. Big shot off an offensive rebound put back by Cannon Huss with less than 3 seconds left to put the Max up. The Max had trailed by 11 at halftime, and they're down by at the very least by like 16 points in that game, and made a comeback. And look, they showed. I mean, they're the top ranked team in Division 5 in both polls, and barring something absolutely jaw-dropping, will be a number 1 seed when the tournament brackets for boys basketball are announced on Sunday. I was going to say that's this weekend, right?
That is this weekend.
Yeah.
And this is a McDonald team that, I think their biggest strength is how well they play together. Like if you just look at their numbers, they shoot a lot of threes. They make a lot of threes, but they shoot a lot of threes. You're like, man, sometimes that can kind of go away in a cold game in the playoffs. But it's like you watch them play, they don't take many bad threes. Like they're always within the flow of their offense. Eddie Minnemeyer, who's on the verge of, becoming the area's all-time leader in threes in the year.
Wow.
He's going to play EW Superior. Like, and he's shooting a good percentage. Like, WIS Sports keeps track of the 3-point leaderboard, because at the end of the year, you have your best in each division go to the state tournament, and they do the 3-point contest, which has been around for like a handful of years or so.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't think the guy I would assume has attempted more threes than anybody in the state, you wouldn't think he would necessarily be the highest percentage, but he is. Like, he's one of the top shooters in Division 5, and like, it's, they're just a very good team overall doing that. And but you also saw the toughness of that team on Tuesday night, because Fall Creek is I talked about it last week. They're a darn good team.
Mm-hmm.
They're a tough team. They've got size. They're well coached. They're very fundamentally sound, and to be able to make a comeback like that on a team like that, I think says a lot about McDonald and this team that they are. I mean, Fall Creek's the only team that's beat them.
Mm-hmm.
They beat them last month by 4 in a game that McDonald again was down by 18 at one point and had a chance to tie it late. Man. So they clinch a share of the conference title, their first conference title share at the very least of any kind since 2017. They can clinch it outright tonight with a win at Thorpe. If the Cardinals pull the upset there and Fall Creek beats Caddo, it would be a shared conference title.
All right. So any other boys hoops action as before the seeding kind of keep an eye on, or is everything you think kind of set for?
Well, I think
the
the Hudson boys
weekend?
clinched to share the conference title. I think Memorial can still grab a pair, but a share, but they need some help from Hudson losing the game. Right now, certainly in my backyard, you definitely got to give a shout out to the Cha-High boys, who went on a 7-game losing streak in January, and now have won 7 in a row, or a 7-game losing streak into a 7-game winning streak. They picked up a win last night in New Richmond, so. They've kind of, since the start of the new year, they've kind of been on both ends of it. But that's a Chippewa team that even during that losing streak almost knocked off Hudson, who's state ranked. They got one more matchup coming up here. I believe it's maybe next Friday. I think it's next Friday against Memorial. So that'll be a good test for them. Certainly, I think the Raiders will probably be cheering for the Cardinals as they're looking to wrap out that outright title. But But yeah, otherwise, things are kind of getting settled. I think, the East Lakeland title Prairie Farm, sealed that up last night. But we're getting down to it. Wrestling is we got sectionals this weekend. Eau Claire North is hosting a Division 1. So if you're looking to grab some good wrestling close to home, you can just head over to the Doghouse there. But and also we're going to see the thing this year too is this is the first year that the girls postseason for wrestling is going to be run side by side with the guys.
Nice.
So the girls will be in action there too, and the girls did not wrestle regionals just because they're starting at sectionals. Your region or your sectional champion in each class is going to go on to state next week, which will be again run in conjunction with the guys at the Cole Center. So that'll be really, really cool to see. And we got boys swimming state this weekend down in Waukesha. We've got gymnastics conference meets this week, so sectionals are coming up next week. I mean, we're there, man.
I know I asked Justice about this. We went through all the brackets, so we don't need to do that. But was there anything with the girls' seedings that caught you or off guard, or anything that stood out to you? I guess
not really. And I wasn't maybe I'm more Chippewa County focused, so
right.
But I don't know. There wasn't anything I saw seeding wise that was surprised. And talking to some people with some teams, they're a little bit kind of uneasy about the electronic seating, because remember this is being done for basketball just as it was for football, and just because because they don't fully know the weighting of the formula the WIA uses, like you just don't know.
Right.
In the past when there was the seating meetings, you kind of get a good idea, but I didn't see anything, at least from Chippewa County wise. McDonald was a 2 seed in Division 5 behind Prairie Farm, which they should have been. Prairie Farm's unbeaten, ranked second in the state. Could be number 1 after this week with Blair Taylor losing to Alma Center Lincoln. But otherwise, kind of looking across the board, I didn't see anything that I thought kind of stood out. In football, sometimes that we've seen that kind of happen, but I think it's kind of like comparing apples to pomegranates, because in football, you're not seeding
apples to pomegranates.
I've heard, yes. In football, you're not seeding everybody. You're seeding, it's different.
Right.
Like just how you stack up one team versus another is way different than when it is for basketball. Yeah. So I didn't see anything that was kind of, eye-opening and surprising, at least on the girls' end. And Sunday we'll see on the guys' end. The guys, they'll be Sunday afternoon, and the WIA is doing a reveal show for that, and they're also doing one for the state wrestling brackets.
Oh, okay.
Which and the boys, the state or the wrestling brackets one will be on Valley Sports Wisconsin, and the boys basketball will be a little later in there. I think it's 2:00 maybe, and that'll be on the NFHS network if you want to tune in and check out. But yeah, those will be both revealed on Sunday, and that's something that the WIA has really started to do here, is because in the past it was just kind of revealed, I'm gonna say haphazardly, but it was just kind of like it would just be refreshing the website on the WIA's website to see like when a bracket you were looking for was placed after they had the meeting.
Right.
So on the one hand, this is it's kind of cool that it's all just done at once and it's a little more uniform.
Mm-hmm.
So they've started doing it with other stuff, and I'm kind of curious to see how much they continue to do it with here.
Absolutely. And then for Blue Gold wise, we've got coming up today and tomorrow, gymnastics, swimming and diving is also going on. Hey, speaking of swimming and diving, we got a school record, a Denner school record yesterday, it looks like, for swimming. Got baseball starting at Rhodes in Tennessee, Memphis, Tennessee. And then a big weekend for hockey, too. Women's taking on River Falls, and the men's team also in action as well. Then, tennis is going on and all that fun stuff. But should be, just kind of looking at the upcoming schedule coming up here. Next week will be the playoffs for the WIAC for Blue Gold basketball. But that women's hockey game against River Falls, that should be a good. I know Justice was talking about that too. Not men's hockey. I misspoke there. Just the women's hockey going up against River Falls. So you can check out the upcoming schedule for the Blue Golds and all the recaps at bluegolds.com. All right, let's take a quick break, and we'll get to some Brewers chat again, but we're going to bring in some Aaron Jones talk, a little bit more details here about this new contract coming up here for the Packers and Aaron Jones, and maybe an idea of how much actually the Packers will save in cap space for this year. It might be a little bit more than what you think. Before we get to the Aaron Jones chat here this morning, we got to do a Carpet City Flooring Center local sports spotlights.
Yes, we
Brandon,
do.
Who
And
are we going with?
well, I had mentioned in amongst all of our local talk about the suddenly surging Chi boys basketball team.
Mm-hmm.
Last night they picked up a 62-55 win at New Richmond, their 7th win in a row, and almost had a triple double. And kind of a unique one. So this week, we are going to go with Chi senior Trent Lindner,
Okay.
who last night's game, 15 points, 11 rebounds, 7 block shots.
Wow.
That's like the Dikembe Mutombo triple-double, almost.
Yeah.
Like, that's a very Dikembe Mutombo line there, but,
Didn't Dave Robinson have a quadruple-double?
I believe so. It was probably with assists and block, but,
yeah.
I mentioned, the Chippewa boys basketball team is, they're both teams in Chippewa Falls are playing very, very well right now, but the Chi boys it's coming back together for him a little bit here, and Trent Lindner is a big part of it. I mean, he's a big kid, and he's a big part of it. So, I mean, he had himself a very memorable game. I mean, that's a score line I don't really remember seeing very often.
Especially at the high school level.
So we're going to go with Trent Lindner.
Good pick. All right. I like it. So in case you're just joining us, and thank you for actually doing this at like 6 a.m., breaking this news instead of like 9:02 like it usually goes sometimes. But if you missed it this morning, Aaron Jones has a new I don't know if the proper way to say this, Brandon, is a new contract, a restructured contract, or whatever have you, because it is a little different. It's not the, adding some years, converting to signing bonus, and pushing the credit card charge, down in the future here a little bit.
Kicking the can down the road.
Right. He took a pay cut. He took about a $5 million pay cut, it looks like, to stay with Green Bay. Now, if you follow like Ken Ingalls, who's a Packers cap guy on Twitter, like he can figure it out, he put something out interesting saying after receiving a $5 million pay cut and contract restructure, Aaron Jones' new 2023 salary cap number should come in at just under $8.2 million, which his cap hit for this year was about 20. But what Ken says, if they choose to add another void year, a potential $11.8 million cap savings for this year. That is a huge savings for a team that was already over about $17.5 million over cap space. Now, for me, I remember saying in the offseason with OTAs and mini camps and that, there was one veteran that was always a constant at those when they didn't have to be there, and that was Aaron Jones. Even like when it was, veterans were dismissed early, Aaron Jones was there. He was still working out. He was still practicing and all that sort of stuff. And I think it's clear for anybody who watches Packer games, NFC North games, whatever, knows how talented he is. He may not be, numbers wise like a Nick Chubb or a Derrick Henry or something like that. But I think you look at it too, the amount of carries he's had, he's got a lower amount of carries. Is it by design to kind of preserve a body and save him there a little bit? But I don't think there's any question what kind of talent he possesses, not only running the football, but in the pass catching.
I was going to say, you mentioned some of those other guys, but I would say that Jones probably brings more through the air than those guys do. And, look, we were kind of talking about this, I think, a little bit. I think it was off air, but either way, like, this, I don't think one way or the other gives any, window into Aaron Rodgers' future, because look, either Aaron Rodgers is going to be happy Aaron Jones is back, or they're going to be giving Jordan Love Aaron Jones, which is a big help.
Right. Yeah. That's the thing. It's like, okay, again, you said it perfectly. It's either, one of Aaron Rodgers' weapons stays, or Aaron Jones's role becomes a little bit bigger next year because of Jordan Love. Either way, they're covering all the bases here. And it's interesting timing too, Brandon. I don't know if you saw this on Twitter. It was a couple days ago, and I was debating whether to bring up like a question like this, but somebody had looked at the numbers of all the starting running backs who won the Super Bowl for the last 10 years or so, and how much money they made. And I think the highest paid running back on that list was Leonard Fournette just a couple years ago. It was at $2 million. And because what's a common narrative that kind of goes around? Well, you try to win the Super Bowl with the quarterback on a rookie contract, surround him with talent. And I think some people were kind of going, here's the numbers here, but it was actually it was, if you want to count it, Percy Harvin at 2.5.
Which
Yeah,
I mean,
that was the
more
leading rusher,
and
Yeah.
he was not. He was a receiver. He wasn't a running back.
right? But then it kind of was like, oh, so should the teams not pay? It goes back to the argument, how much money should you pay a running back, sort of thing, because this goes all the way back to 2009, and Pierre Thomas, 460,000, James Starks, 320,000. Yeah, Ray Rice was right before that. He was at 2 million, and then Leonard Fournette was at 2 million too. So, is there any correlation there? I don't know. I don't think it diminishes the role of running backs, because I will say the James Starks example, he was what boost the Packers in the postseason and win that Super Bowl, because they were struggling to find a running game.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the amount of money has anything to do with it. He was a rookie that year, but he was a big boost to that. And I think you can make the case for a lot of these players, but were they the highest paid ones? No, but maybe, but I don't know. I feel like Aaron Jones, we know what you have in him. I'd rather have him on my team than not. I think is probably the best way to put it. I mean, he is does a bunch of things, different ways. I mean, would you like him on your Minnesota team? Let me ask you this: would you rather have Dalvin Cook or Aaron Jones?
I think at this point, I'd rather have Aaron Jones.
Yeah.
And the timing of this is very interesting, because the Vikings are in a bit of a similar spot with Dalvin Cook.
Right.
Because the Brewers. Sorry, I was venting. I was venting on one thing instead of venting on the other. But the Vikings have got a clear cap space too, and he's someone that's been talked about, because he played this year. He played all the games this year, but you could definitely tell, like, it wasn't the same Dalvin Cook.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of wonder if maybe some of those carries from some of those years, 2019, 2020, are starting to catch up with them, because everyone's got no dominer on him.
Right.
So that's a question to wonder. And Dalvin Cook had, I think it was shoulder surgery here this week, and something that he's been putting off for a little while. So it's going to be interesting to see, because they certainly could go younger at running back. They've got a couple young ones, and you've always seen that late round running backs, or cheap veterans off the street, can make a difference. So that's a question they're going to have to answer.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously the Packers, like you said, the Packers are a better team with Aaron Jones on it than not.
And I think it's already kind of starting the narrative on this thing. Like NFL and ESPN posted this: the two highest paid running backs in the NFL, and it's a picture of Christian McCaffrey and Aaron Jones. Well, as Adam Schefter had pointed out, including this season, Jones will now have made $31 million since 2021, the most for any other running back other than Christian McCaffrey. So that's total value, which I think we have to keep in mind before the narrative starts to come out that Aaron Jones is the highest paid running back in the league.
Yeah, it's different.
It's different. That's why I don't necessarily just look at the headlines like that.
Mm-hmm.
You got to look at the total value of everything. And the big thing too is the values of, like, is that signing bonus money? Is that base money? How did they make that money?
Correct.
It's NFL contracts are so
complicated.
Yeah, there's more to it than just 5 years for $25 million.
Yeah, honestly, one of the simplest contracts every semester. Remember, it was the first one Kirk Cousins signed with the Vikings.
Yeah,
because it was just all guaranteed. So
right.
It's just like, was it 3 or 84 million?
Yeah,
like that you got what it said.
Kind of like Deshaun Watson with the whole guaranteed contract.
Yeah, football. You always have to look a little deeper.
Mm-hmm. That's why I believe, I'm pretty confident when I say this, because I think Andrew Brandt had mentioned this too. Like, Green Bay's always been more about, like, the bonuses, sort of, or maybe not given the high bonus, because the signing bonus thing, that's the guaranteed portion. Like, that's why they always say look at what that signing bonus is. So, like, Aaron Jones, it was at 8 point something, but for math purposes, let's say a guy signs a 5-year deal that includes a $10 million signing bonus. That player gets the $10 million signing bonus day one.
Yes.
Day one, they cut a check. That's why you see the base salary so low in year one. But the thing is, the cap hit is divided by 5 years. So that 10 is divided by 5.
So they've already got that.
Right. Yeah, they've got it. It's a cheap base salary because they've got that cut check. But the cap hit isn't $10 million in year one. It's divided by the length of the contract.
Yes.
So it's a little bit more complicated.
So then if that person's cut after like year 3, they could still be on the books for like $4 million, because you would still have year 4 and year 5.
That's where the dead cap thing kind of comes in, because then it's this weird phrasing of like the contract normally. I say normally because Aaron Rodgers is the opposite of this. Normally, the longer the contract goes, the cheaper the dead cap hit will be, because there's that like, okay, the player signed a 4-year contract for $50 million, 30 of it is guaranteed. Math purposes, that player has to reach that 30 million, and then that dead cap hit is like nothing or smaller the closer you get to 30. Even though they've already got 30 million in their pocket, contract wise, math wise, year one, it says they only made 6 million.
But
so that's why that dead cap hit would be
but
higher.
realistically, they made more than that.
Right, exactly. I hope that we can kind of big that. But to answer your question to Surveyor, to explain void years, those are dummy years. That really popped up with the COVID, with the COVID situation.
Was it the Saints that were kind of the first one? They were
the Taysom Hill thing.
And it's not, and it's something a lot of other teams have got involved. The Vikings have too, and to me, it's annoying.
Yeah, it is. So it's an extra year added on the contract, but it's not a year that player's going to play in. So like the example for maybe Green Bay for a good one is Adrian Amos. Adrian Amos is a but he's got like 3 voided years on his contract. It's a dummy year. The player will never play or get paid for it. It's another way to extend the cap hit. So you're pushing more of the cap hit.
And the Vikings did something similar to Dalvin Tomlinson, who's a D lineman who's a free agent after this year. If he goes elsewhere, I think it's like $7.5 million or something. Like, he's still on the books. Now, if a player resigns for the dummy years, then it's spread over the length. So like I said, to use Dalvin Tomlinson's example, he's on the hook for like 7.5 dead or for a void year.
Right.
If he re-signed a 3-year deal with the Vikings this offseason, then it's spread over the contract. So it would be like, so say he signs 3 years, 30 million, so it's 10 years. But really his cap hit would be 12.5 because it's the money that I mentioned plus the spread. It's
right. Yeah, it's otherwise if they don't re-sign, then that cap hit comes. So like for example, like Adrian Amos, his cap hit's 7.95 because of the voided years. But if they resign him, like you said, they can spread that out. So that's another thing that's kind of popped up in the last few years.
And that one I really don't. Well, I also don't like it because the Vikings made pretty liberal use of that, and it's going to put them in a tough spot now. So that's on you, Rick Spielman.
Yeah. So I mean, that's a decision though that Green Bay has to come to when it comes to a safety now.
Yeah.
Do you resign Adrian Amos, which you can say maybe the last couple of years has kind of gone down. Do you want to bring him back? But then is it going to be cheaper just to bring him back because of the void on there? So I hope that helps explain it a little bit, Surveyor. They're dummy years in a sense to push the cap out, but it could really come back to bite you right away. It's like a debt collector might be coming right now.
Yeah.
Or, you can kind of push it a little bit further. Yeah, but that really spiked up with that COVID year with the Saints. And I think it was that Taysom Hill contract because wasn't it like you're paying Taysom Hill $20-some million a year? Oh, there's those void years on there. So
yeah.
And the Saints are the one team that they don't mind to keep pushing.
Well, no, and especially at that point, they're at the end of it, Drew Brees, and they realize like, hey, this is our shot. We need to do what we can, and ultimately it worked.
Right. It's interesting too because I know this happened after the Super Bowl or right before the Super Bowl. Because like Howie Roseman was, I saw Andrew Brandt kind of mention this, but Howie Roseman's also the like capologist business, agent type of GM. Mickey Loomis is the same one. He's a Saints general manager. And so you got it's almost kind of opposite a little bit where you got like Mickey Loomis, and Philly had to pay the piper too when they traded Carson Wentz with all that dead cap hit. Let's not kid ourselves. They had to do that. But you got that. You got that one business model. You got another business model. Then you got the scout GM like a Green Bay.
Yeah.
So
just like I can identify the talent. Pay him what it is. Bring him in.
I think could you make the case? There's like 3 different style of GMs in the NFL: the business side, the scout side, and then maybe like yours, the analytical type of side.
Yep. And certainly, previously I would, Rick Spielman would be in that scouting one of, hey, we'll find we'll go find the guy, and
or maybe there's 4 because what's John Lynch, former player type of guy.
He's a very rare one.
Yeah, like the John Elway, John Lynch.
Yeah, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but John Lynch obviously has.
Right. And I know I was one of them. I kind of questioned. I'm like,
Yeah.
really?
But he's been great.
He's been good. So maybe there's 4 different types. Okay, never mind. There's 5 now. Jerry Jones, yeah, owner,
Wow.
GM sort of thing
Yeah.
there too. But
The owner that thinks he knows better.
golly, yeah. But so hey, kudos to Aaron Jones. I don't think
Yeah.
I've seen a negative thing about him. I don't think I've heard any negative things said about him. I had a chance to interview him at the Super Bowl after his rookie year. What you see in just my 15 minutes of talking with him, what you see is exactly what he is, because I'm a nobody, and I got to interview him at a table, and he answered every question like you see on TV or radio. Yes, sir. No, sir. Like that's how polite he was, and that's his upbringing with the military family. But that's how he was. Yes, sir. No, sir. But after that, you know who I interviewed after that? Complete opposite. Jamal Williams. And what you see on TV is exactly how he was there too. So, but yeah, man, I love Jamal Williams. I wish he was still. He's a free agent.
He is. He's gonna make himself some money.
I think so. He's up there in age too because he was the same draft class as Aaron Jones.
Yeah.
But you rush for all those touchdowns. You may not have
someone. He's gonna get paid from somebody.
Yeah, it might even be Detroit. They still want
Maybe.
him. So, but all right. Tell you what, we got to take a quick break, and then we'll do a little cream of the crop. How about that? Cream of the crop, and then finish up. Last call for any of your Brewers thoughts, if you want to hit us up with that. Got something to say about Mark Anuncio or Matt Arnold or Corbin Burns? Let us know. All right, when we shut the off here, we're going to start up another edition of the Man Cave podcast brought to you by Hy-Vee and Toyson Ford. We're going to have a lot of Brewers stuff in that one to say. So look for that coming up later this morning. But it is time. Brandon, it's your favorite time of the whole week. Who is your cream of the crop for this week?
Well, Sunday was the end of an era. As we know, and all career of an absolute.
You're going to go with who I think you're going to go with?
I am. My cream of the crop this week is Chad Henne.
Ah, you did it.
Chad Henne retired at the end of a 15-year career. I believe he was a second-round draft pick from the Dolphins back in the day.
Yeah.
But long career, mostly as a backup quarterback, but near the end of his career, found it with Kansas City. Made $40 million in his career and has won 2 Super Bowls. Which, I mean, I don't like to do the whole, well, this person won as many as this thing, because obviously the context matters. But for the purpose of this, that's the same number of Super Bowls as Elway, Manning, Starr, and Staubach.
You're not wrong.
That's how you do it.
Yep.
That's how you do it.
Yep. Man. All right, so that's yours?
That's mine. Chad Henne.
I'm going a different route, and this was at the hands of, against the Badgers, but Caitlin Clark from Iowa, girls basketball player. You probably, was it last year or the year before, you probably saw her clips shooting it from, like, the logo. She's incredibly talented, but she made some history against the Badgers. And she's not even done playing yet. She's got probably another year. But she has become the first Big Ten women's basketball player to be both top 10 in career scoring and career assists in league history. And she's not done. She's got this year and next year to go at it. So, she's a Watertown, Minnesota native. She gets focused on her shooting and, like, long-distance shooting. But the fact that, I can always, because I remember as a kid, maybe I didn't like Allen Iverson. Oh, he's a ball hawk. He's a ball hawk. Kobe, he's a ball hawk. You can't say that about a person who's in top 10 scoring and assists for crying out loud. So, Caitlin Clark, if you don't know who she is, look it up. She's
you should.
Best women's basketball player, college basketball player right now.
Yep.
I mean, she's amazing. So, but that's my cream of the crop right there.
That could be any week.
That could be any week.
But it's this week.
Yep. Just top 10 already, and she's got like a year plus.
Yeah. She's gonna do some damage on those leaderboards.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Lisa. So I mean, I know it's Iowa, but Lisa's not UConn. I'll just say that.
True. That's an Iowa basketball team. It's a little bit easier to root for.
Right.
Doesn't have Fran McCaffrey as coach.
That's true. Exactly. So we got a couple of other texts here. Gonna buy an Aaron Jones jersey today. That seals the deal for me. Leadership, hard work, OTAs. What a stud. That shows a lot about a guy's genuine passion and desire to embrace the team concept, in my opinion. And maybe that person, too, can grab my hat for me, too, that I need to pick up. So, just saying. It's a little inside joke. So, what else do we got out there? We had Brandon's mom. I forgot. Your mom texted earlier that she's going to get some Man Cave brats today, too. So,
that's good.
Got the Man Cave Light. I don't know if you know. I didn't tell you the 4 flavors. Man Cave Light. It's pickle cheese and bacon, jalapeno and bacon, and a taco brat.
Those all sound good.
Mm-hmm. So grab a package
have to get one of each.
Yep. And load it up. Got All-Star Weekend in Daytona, right? Daytona's this weekend, right? So
Daytona 500 this weekend.
Kind of
fun. What you got?
Yeah.
There you go.
I heard Jimmy Johnson's back.
He is. He is.
Is he like full time or just for this?
I think he's just part time because he bought in ownership on team. He's actually working with Richard Petty.
Oh,
so a couple of 7-time champions they're working together. But yeah, he's running, I think, part time.
They should name their thing like Bill Belichick names his boats, like 7 rings.
Oh,
or 7.
They could have did something. They could have did something.
14.
I think it's just called like Legacy Motor Club or something. So, but I mean, pretty generic, but
pretty
makes
solid
sense
there too. Yeah. So. Okay, we get back to some more Brewers talk. You're going to be where tonight?
I'm going to be in Stanley tonight. Stanley Boys, Bloomer Boys basketball to close up the Western Clover-Belt season. A couple of Triple County teams going after each other, and I'm looking forward to it.
Mm-hmm. All right, so there you go. Last couple comments. Save some for the pod though too.
I will.
But do you think we will hear from Mark Anasio in the next couple of days?
No, I don't.
Because he usually does show up at spring training.
He does. I don't think we will.
Yeah. I wish we would.
I would too.
It's just, I'm kind of speechless because I don't know what else to say with the whole situation right now. I mean, whatever way you want to go about. And I think, a lot of people are looking at this, the difference, the $700,000 difference, which I think, yeah, it's minuscule. But to me, and we talked about it yesterday, but I think to me, what overshadows that, at least in my opinion, is what Corbin Burns said they told him.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. That
they put him at the forefront of not making the postseason last year.
Correct.
That to me is a little bit more damning than
and that kind of goes back to my initial premise with all this is all of this is that being kind of outed here in public, is all of this negative publicity that this team is taking on, is that all worth the $700,000 difference? Which I don't know, did you read Adam McCulvey's piece on Brewers.com?
I did.
Did you see what he had mentioned about if you don't check it out, it's as always, it's great. But and he had mentioned that according to a source, told McCulvey that Burns would have accepted
like 10.5.
It was like 10.56 or something like that. So not even so it wouldn't have even been like all the way to what he had offered or what he had filed.
Yeah.
Like so essentially, this is happening over $500,000.
$500,000.
Which, don't get me wrong, to you and me and everyone else listening,
that's exactly what I said yesterday.
That's a ton of money.
Yeah, that's what I said yesterday. I'm like, hey, $700,000 to all of us is probably a lot.
That is life changing. Like you're set for the rest of your life money.
Yep.
But and I'm never going. Maybe that's something I'm just kind of the way I felt as I've gotten older. Now I'm never going to look down on an athlete getting their worth.
Yeah.
Because in so many times, especially being a pitcher in baseball, like it can go away just like that.
Yep.
An injury or whatever. Like as long as the ATM's still spitting out money, you go to it.
Yep. Absolutely. And the thing is too, it's like Burns can't sit there and hold out. He can't. He unless he wants to end his career, essentially, right?
Yeah, I mean, like that. You don't see that. Like you don't see. That's why you see holdouts in football and stuff, but you don't see it in baseball,
right?
Because in some ways it's because they are like just the way the system is.
Right.
You don't see very many. You see extensions, but you don't necessarily see redone contracts. You do in football,
right? Yeah. And it's not like basketball where a guy can pout and force his way out, and
as we've seen many times.
But do you think this will have an effect throughout the clubhouse, like the Josh Hader thing? Now that Burns put that out there,
might.
And I think you made a good point the other day, or just earlier too. Start to add it up. Lorenzo Cain made comments. You got this. You got the Josh Hader thing. Even to feed off the Josh Hader thing, Eric Lauer kind of even mentioned that.
Yeah, I forgot about Eric Lauer, but that's another one. Like I said, if all of those things individually, you just chalk up as, oh, okay, someone was disappointed in something, okay. But when suddenly all of that's happening, I don't think it's not nothing.
Right. And where is it coming from?
Higher up, and the
how high?
Yeah, we don't know. And that the frustrating thing too is like it comes down to just communication.
Yeah.
And like just being decent. And like
so like my question then for others would be, was it worth it for $500,000 to $700,000 to save that amount of money to where you're at right now?
And that's my initial premise of this whole thing. Like if you're looking at this as risk reward, like I have a college professor that would always say, is the juice worth the squeeze? Is what you're getting out of something worth the effort you're putting in? Is it worth it? Are the Brewers standing here today and saying, yes, we nailed that. Like this went exactly the way we hoped? There's no way.
There's no way.
Right.
I don't understand this.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
It's
I
look,
really want to do a
yeah,
case study on this.
look, the court of public opinion is not always the best way to go about like looking how things are.
Mhm.
But man, are the Brewers rightfully getting cooked?
You know, I know you're not Packers. I almost kind of want to do a poll. Who has like mismanaged people and players the most, or the worst, I should say, in the last couple of years? Has it been Green Bay or Milwaukee? Brewers, I should say. It's Brewers.
Yeah. Bucks
Packers.
of the Mile franchise right now, as long as Jimmy Haslam doesn't come in.
Yeah, just that's the thing.
Stay
it's
away.
like, just
Stay
come on
away.
now. Let's not do that. But I mean, these two need to get together and figure out how do we do a better job at managing.
Just
Yeah.
And to me, like communication is just.
I don't think you can over communicate.
No,
what I mean?
and there's people like there's certain things too where I will over communicate because I don't want things to fall through the cracks.
Right.
Like, and you can't.
I think that's one of the biggest downfalls in any life, in any position. If you have, your higher ups or something and they don't communicate, and then you're like, your mind's like wondering, like, why'd they do that? What did they mean by that? What's going on?
Yeah, and I don't mind wanders.
Yeah.
Hear from somebody from a week or two, you're like, oh, well, what's wrong? Are they, this is that. Like, no, just communicate, be upfront, like say, hey, this is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it.
Because assuming that maybe that clubhouse is going to be like any other work environment, what's going to happen? People are going to start talking. They're going to start, spreading stuff.
And here's the thing, too, now all these other players, as they arrive at camp, they're going to be asked about this.
Yeah. Yep.
So you're going to have Brandon Woodruff being asked, hey, what do you think about this?
Who, by the way, is making more than Corbin.
Yes, but
I
that's a little different because he reached Super 2 status, which means he got the arbitration a year earlier, which means his earning power skyrocketed.
But people are going to use that.
Yes, they are.
They're going to use that.
Yes, they are.
So, but you're right. It is different on there. Again, it's the headlines.
Exactly. So, and it's just, is all of this stuff that was unnecessary to bring upon your team worth essentially the price of 1 year of a major league player making the minimum?
Yeah.
Was this worth 1 year of Mark Mathias, being a utility guy for you? Mark Mathias no longer with the team now in Texas, but just trying to think of the baseline example of someone kind of hopping back and forth. And I don't see how the answer is yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was going to ask you some Bruce questions today, but it had nothing to deal with this until yesterday.
That's what I was thinking. Like, yesterday, I'm like, oh, I'm sure we'll probably talk about the Brewers. I'm like, we'll probably just, basic, like, hey,
we got a game next Saturday. For spring training games next Saturday.
I hope for the Brewers home opener, Corbin Burnes gets a standing ovation.
Yes, I do too.
So if you're going, make a lot of noise for everybody anyway. But
that's like the thing too. I kind of said in the first hour, I hope he balls out this year.
Yeah.
I hope he wins 20-some games. I hope he
shoves
the triple crown, like wins everything, most wins, low ERA, strikeouts, all that, kind of like flipping the bird sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, I don't like. There's no way that was the intention because you don't want to risk alienating your team to try to get someone who's already pitching at a really high level,
right?
Like who literally, 2 years ago was the best pitcher in the National League.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be the best case scenario. You
know what, though? It's got other fan bases riled up saying, hey, we can trade for Corbin Burnes now.
It's true.
You're seeing that all over the place.
Oh, yeah.
Like, let's make a move, Dodgers. Let's go grab Corbin and all that. Well, yeah, I guarantee you now, after that happened,
I bet you they got calls.
They got calls.
I'm sure. And Matt Arnold's probably like, assuming he wasn't a big part of all of this, yeah.
That's where I'm just, and I have to imagine if we're focusing on the line of like the forefront line, I have to imagine Arnold knew that was going to be part of the defense for the Brewers going into that. Yes. Right? I mean, he had to have known that.
I think so.
If not, then again, I go back to Mark Anasio. Figure out your thing. What's the process here? What's going on with your team?
Yeah.
Because it goes back to the communication part.
Yep.
And if he did it, I hope he fell over his chair and he is irate right now.
Yep.
Like he is like, whoever that out
and
get out.
And at some point when he talks, because usually if nothing else, like he talks on opening day usually, or the home opener, whatever it is. But and if there's something he didn't like, don't give the passive like, well, say no, I didn't like that. But make sure you communicate that to people first before you're taking it to the media.
Right. Yes. Yeah. I don't know of another. That guy was like on top for fan
Oh yeah,
perspective, and now it's like you've
I
got
mean,
a lot of people wanting him out.
I will always be grateful to Mark Anastasio because when he bought the team from the Sea Leagues, that returned the Brewers to relevancy.
Mm-hmm.
And basically the Milwaukee Brewers became relevant in Wisconsin after Mark Anastasio bought the team.
Yeah.
Those two things are related. But you're right, to see where he was even years ago, like 2019, that was a team that was, in the wild card game, game they could have won, but like, that the offseason prior, they had brought back Moustakas on a 1-year deal when people weren't expecting it. They had signed Yasmani Grandal to a high value 1-year deal.
Yep.
Like, they weren't spending a ton of money, but they were spending enough. Like you went into that year like, hey, they're doing they're going for it. They're giving this a shot.
Yep.
Like that's all you want.
Yep.
As a fan, that's all I want, to let you like to have a team say, we're even if you want about moves like signing, we can say Jeff Suppan back in the day or Garza and Loesch, like, but at least they were trying.
Right.
It wasn't just sitting on your hands and your big free agent moves are Wade Miley and Brian Anderson.
So I just happened to, and I only got 2 minutes to do this because I was like, you mentioned that. Remember the other potential buyer for the Brewers was Dan Gilbert, the Cleveland Cavaliers owner. But it led me to Mark Anastasio's bio on Brewers.com. Really quick, I'm going to go through this really quick here. But it says, Anastasio remains focused on his long-standing objective to establish the organization as a champion both on and off the field. He continues to work diligently to uphold the 4 cornerstones he pledges he made to the Brewers and the community when he purchased the club 16 years ago. Number 1, fielding a perennial competitive team.
I mean, they're competitive.
Yeah. 2, delivering the best fan experience possible, whether at American Family Field, through broadcasts, or over the internet. Some people have issues with the TV viewing.
With TV and also maybe certain things as far as prices at the game.
Remaining a leader in the community. Okay.
Yeah. Won't argue there.
Being an organization where people want to work, whether on the field or behind the scenes.
Well.
So.
All right.
That's the 4 cornerstones. We shall see. Exactly. So with that, there you go. There's the shot clock.
Sorry, we're sending you into the weekend a bit of a bummer.
Hey, breaking news. Corbin Bird signs accept. No, I'm just kidding. We'll have more of this on our episode of the Man Cave podcast coming up later on this morning. Have a fantastic weekend, people. We'll do this again Monday morning, just past 6. We'll talk to you then.